I'm Stacey.
I'm Jenny.
And this is Learning for Life, a homeschool podcast. We are two homeschoolers who use different methods, curriculum, and strategies to make it all work.
Our goal is to help parents teach kids how to develop a lifelong love of learning.
Welcome back to another Homeschool How-To. These how-tos are shorter than our regular episodes, but they are going to be more of a quick, in-depth look at one very specific topic. I'm Stacey, and today we are going to take a look at minimalism in homeschooling and how it might benefit your homeschool. I definitely don't consider myself a full-blown minimalist, but depending on the definition of what you consider a minimalist, I could fall into that category. So what is minimalism? If you have not heard this term before, minimalism can mean very different things to different people. If you're new, then it basically means living with less to have more freedom and less stress. So minimalism can be used as a tool to help you live with less and be able to possibly even have more happiness. Now, depending on what you've heard about minimalism, some people might say, oh, you can't be a minimalist if you own more than 100 things, or you can't be a minimalist if you own a car, or various different degrees of all these rules around minimalism, or you can only have a certain number of books, or this or that. So one thing that I wanted to mention here is kind of how I learned about minimalism and what minimalism sort of means to me to better help you figure out how you can use this tool in your homeschool. I was first introduced to the idea of minimalism by a close friend, and I also heard about it, saw it in books, YouTube videos, and I even saw a video of this couple that were traveling the world and living out of like one suitcase each. And that's like all they needed. And they considered themselves minimalists. So this was really hard. Even though I liked the idea of being able to not have a ton of stuff, I could not identify with these people because I was married. My husband was in the military, so we couldn't just go wherever we wanted. And we even, had kids. So I did not think minimalism was possible with kids because I had this idea of all of your belongings had to fit into a suitcase to be a minimalist. Then I found the Minimal Mom on YouTube. Her name is Dawn. I absolutely love her channel. And I found her because she had a series on kids' toys. And this was pure gold for me. And she gave me some inspiration. And I started with my kids' clothes. And this was really easy. And one tip that she did give was whenever you're going through things to get rid of something, you don't have to just give it to Goodwill straight away. You can put it in like a 6-month box where you put it in a box, you close it up and you just write donate after 6 months and you write the date. And then that way, if you don't need to go back and get anything in that box in 6 months, you can, without even opening it, very confidently pick that box up and go take it to Goodwill. You don't need to look back through it because you might remember and have, like I did, oh, I might need that. Like it's really, really hard to not look in the box. So now that my kids are older, I do try to share some of these tips with them and be able to not have as much stuff in our house. All right, so now that you have more of an idea of what is minimalism, how I found minimalism, how I'm making it work in my own house, how do I use minimalism in my homeschool? Homeschool supplies is also a very hard thing for me to minimize because this really is, what if I need this? Homeschool supplies is where I get stuck with this a lot, but I do like to limit the amount of curriculum I keep around. Now, I do have one slight caveat that I'm going to just fess up here. I get to cheat a little bit with this one because since we are a part of a charter school here in California, we actually have a curriculum library. So if we're done using something, we can give it to the curriculum library and then they will lend it out and then other families will use it and then give it back. So I don't really have to worry too much about if I give away our multiplication flashcards to the library that I wouldn't be able to find another set. It might not be that exact set, but I don't really have to worry about like going out and rebuying things. So I get to cheat a little bit on that one. So keep that with a grain of salt. Another way that I use minimalism in my homeschool is I limit the amount of spaces where homeschool items can be kept. So I have one closet for homeschool, and it's like a hall closet, so it is fairly big. And I did have this issue over the summer where I could no longer keep shoving stuff in the closet. So that tells me, okay, it's time to really go through this, and then using some of those tips that I learned with the Minimal Moms YouTube channel, and just being able to know that if I have less stuff, it's going to be easier for me to actually access the stuff in the closet that I want to use. Because I'm sure we've all been there, is you go and you know you have something, but you can't find it because there's so much stuff to look through. So the less stuff you have, the easier it'll be to kind of keep it all organized. Another way that I use minimalism in my homeschool is to not have as much stuff on the walls as a school classroom would. I'm not a big fan of making your homeschool room look like a public school classroom, but if you like it and it's decorative for you, go for it. It makes me happy to have my walls a little more clear and not cluttered up with stuff. But some people really don't like to have bare walls, and they would rather have more stuff up. So that you just kind of have to figure out what's more pleasing to your eye. One tip that really helps keep me motivated to implement minimalism into my homeschool is that if I don't see something, I can't feel guilty about not doing it. If you've been around on this podcast or seen our YouTube channel, you know that Jenny and I both love curriculum. I love seeing it. I love having it. I love having too much of it. But I also sometimes will over plan and try to fit too many things into one school year. So when I have all these extra curriculums around, then it actually makes me feel guilty every time I come across them and I haven't started doing them. Okay, so let me know if that is you as well, because that is something that's really hard for me. I did this actually with Layers of Learning. I just loved that it was family style and I wanted to implement it, but I just never had time that year that I bought it. And every time I saw it sitting on the shelf, I just felt guilty that I wasn't doing enough. So if you have so much curriculum and you're like, oh, I really wish I could do this or that. Like, again, you don't want to just get rid of all of your curriculum that you have purchased or bought. But if there's, just a way to maybe pass it on to somebody else, and then maybe, with the intention of them giving it back, or put it somewhere where you don't have to see it and feel guilty about not getting to it. All right, so one thing that I wanted to share with you is one thing that I probably have too much of based on all these tips I've given you. I have a hard time getting rid of this, and this is kids' books. I just don't care if I have too many. I do try to use the tip of, I have a certain space. I've got this one bookshelf. Now we have a couple different bookshelf areas for books. So it's just something my kids really love, having all the different options. We don't utilize a library as much as I would like, just because it's really far for us. So I don't mind having a ton of kids' books in my own house so that we can kind of be our own library. So if you are listening to this and you're like, oh, I'd like to incorporate that, but I could never get rid of this, just know that I'm not perfect at this either. But some of these tips, or even just one of these tips, if you were able to implement it and it helps give you some of the benefits of minimalism, that is the goal. Speaking of benefits of minimalism, I would like to share a few of the benefits that I have found after implementing some of these tips. So first, again, if there's less stuff sitting around, less clutter, my mind doesn't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about being guilty for not doing something. I don't have to be distracted by too much stuff on my walls. It just helps me not be so cluttered in my mind. Another benefit is by having fewer items or fewer toys, it's a lot easier for the kids to clean up. I've done this a lot where I've tried to minimize how many toys the kids keep in their bedroom so that there is not so much that they can just, have this entire carpet of toys and then it's just too overwhelming for them. I like to make sure that we keep all the materials, especially with art and all that stuff for homeschooling as well. I don't like to keep so much out that if they wanted to go do it on their own, that they would end up making a bigger mess than they know what to do with. Another benefit of minimalism for me is that the shelves are not jammed full. I try to make sure that I leave some space on shelves. I don't just keep shoving things in there to make it fit so that I can keep it. And it also makes it, again, easier for kids to put their stuff away. Same thing with my bookshelves. We use like the Kallax type shelves, the little squares that are all next to each other. And I make sure to leave space on the shelf so that when they go to put their books away, they're not like literally having to like pry open the books to stick one in. We've all been there, trying to get books to fit on a bookshelf. So leaving some space, making sure the shelves aren't jammed packed really helps. All right, so now it's time for you, based on my experience here, starting to think about some of the tips I shared. Do you need minimalism in your life? Like I said earlier, minimalism is just a tool and you can use it as much or as little as you like. I think every homeschooler could benefit from some level of minimalism, but the level that you want to take it is going to be totally up to you. Again, less stuff is less to clean, less to declutter. So it's up to you. I hope that some of my tips and my advice and my story has helped you decide if this is something you want to implement. If you would like to also check out the Minimal Mom on YouTube to get some inspiration, I will make sure to link to some of the videos that I found super helpful from her, and that should also maybe help inspire you. So I would love to hear from you. You can definitely find us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. If you want to send us an email, you can at kidslearningforlife@gmail.com. And there you can let me know, am I crazy for wanting to use this minimalism tool? Are you thinking about doing it? I would love to know. So feel free to email us. We love to hear from you. Also, it's super helpful for people to rate and review our podcast. It makes it that much easier for others to find our podcast as well. But for now, I think that's it. So I'm going to say, see you next time.